John Urban Nicolson was an American poet and writer. He was born in 1885 in Alma, Kansas, the son of Malcolm Nicholson and Olivia Prigmore. In 1917 he married Ida May Platts. His first book of verse, The King of the Black Isles, came out in 1924. This being the pseudonym his verse appeared under in Chicago newspapers. Beside his own verse, he would translate Villon and render the Canterbury Tales into modern verse. He died in 1944. We will review his only novel, the 1937 Fingers of Fear, another entry on Karl Edward Wagner's list of 39 best horror novels. We see the narrator, Selden Seaverns, with about 68 cents in his pocket by June 1933. Ignored by all his former friends and divorced by his wife Muriel, who would rather dance on stage and get paid for men making love to her. Then he meets the alliteratively named Orman Orms, his old friend, and is invited to dinner and asked to drive to his house at Ormsby to sift through a massive pile of books and write a treatise on the outline of the Elizabethan influence in colonial literature to get Ormond an inheritance. Selden protests he is no scholar, but Ormond hires him all the same. As he takes him to the house, the two are beset upon by the wild pack of hunting dogs kept there, and are only saved by Ormond's sister. Grey, the sister alluded to before, is one to whom Selden begins to plan to fall in love with before he even sees her. At Ormsby, he is also told there are two ghosts wandering about, and mistakes Ormond's 30-year-old Aunt Barbara for one of them, while he sees a typewriter right by itself for no reason in the library once and then never again. After taking stock of the library, he begins to plan to abandon his duties almost at once to go running around the hills with Grey, with whom he had maybe one conversation. Then he sees Grey covered in blood in the library, demanding he make love to her. She runs off and is roaming outside naked, but it turns out it is Grey's twin sister Grace, whose existence is not advertised and who runs amok sometimes. Normally this would not be that concerning, but Grace also told him how Ormond's father murdered his wife by ripping her throat out with his teeth to try and make love to his own sister, the aforementioned Barbara. And then he finds Ormond's wife Agnes violently murdered in the garage as he looks for Grace. Knowing the police might not believe his innocence, he begins to plot to somehow cover up Agnes's death, at least for a time, before he sees Ormond arrive with Muriel, his ex-wife. He learns Muriel is Ormond's mistress by pure chance and came over to help extort Agnes of government bonds, and then has to fight as Ormond tries to violently murder him and tear his throat out when told of the death of Agnes. Then there are two bodies in the house, and Selden and co plot with Barbara, having the dogs rip the bodies to bits and then lie that it was an accident. But then Selden and Muriel are stuck at Ormsby, Selden oscillating between wanting to marry Muriel, Grey, with whom he almost never shares a scene, or Barbara. Also, he seems to see the shade of Ormond's father walking the halls, the same father whom Ormond murdered for killing his mother and then threw down a lime pit. When Barbara reveals she is mad too, opens a safe containing the body of the child she had with her own brother and gets shot by a pistol trap he put in there himself, before Selden and Muriel leave and get remarried. Now this may seem fine, but the problem is all the fluff. The book is spread way too thin. When Agnes is found murdered, Selden goes through one detailed plan to hide the murder and hoodwink the police. Then he goes through an amended version to include Ormond's earthly remains. Then we have another plan explained by Barbara in detail, only to then see it happen anyway and include every step, from scrubbing car seats and floorboards to loosening the hounds and calling for help. And then after this happens, everyone in the house goes on the hunt for lost government bonds, and only so they can give them to Ormond's creditors.